Merhaba everyone. Today we are going to take a look at the cannons and cannoneers of the Ottoman Empire. As one of the three gunpowder empires, and first of the three to effectively utilize gunpowder weapons, the Ottomans were not the first in the Middle East, however, or in Europe to use cannon or gunpowder in battles. The earliest use of cannon in the Middle East is said to be during the Battle of Ain Jalut, where the Mamluks used a primitive hand cannon against the Mongols in battle. It was Mongols, however, who probably brought gunpowder to the Middle East from China, where in the Middle East it came to be known as Chinese salt. The Mongols themselves, however, did not use gunpowder in this particular battle. This in addition to the references of the horses and animals of the Mongols being frightened by the hand cannons, showing that the Mongol riders were not used to it at all. From the Middle East, gunpowder likely spread to Europe through multiple trade routes, from the moorlands into Spain or through the Italian peninsula, as well as through the Silk Roads in Eurasia, where significant advancements were made in the nations of Europe, which included the invention of the cannon and the improvement of gunpowder. The first definite use of artillery in the region of Anatolia was against the Ottoman siege of Constantinople in 1391, where the Ottomans had not yet conquered the Balkans and were still a fledgling state. These loud Byzantine weapons, possibly operated by Janissaries or Franks of Galata, forced the Turks to withdraw. The Ottomans came back, having acquired their own cannon by the siege of 1422 in the second siege of Constantinople. Having now sourced cannon from Venetian colonies and Balkan cannon makers after their successful campaigns in the Balkans, using the small falcon cannons, which were short but wide in battle, the two sides were evenly matched technologically, and the Turks had to build barricades in order to receive the stones of the bombards from the Byzantines. Because the empire at this time was facing economic problems, Pope Pius II promoted the affordable donation of cannon by European monarchs as a means of aid, the Ottomans only withdrawing due to rebellion and treachery by the other Turkish beyliks. Any new cannon after 1422 were gifts from the European states, and aside from these, no other advances were made to the Byzantine arsenal. The use of cannon by the Ottomans finally culminated in the Third Siege of Constantinople in 1453. Where the general idea seemed to be bigger is better, and more has a quality of its own. We know that the Ottomans began to use cannons during the First Battle of Kosovo in 1389, but we do not know how and when any standing artillery corps were founded. Most probably, the first artillery units were founded during the reign of Bayezid I. They were more or less independent units created around a particular master gunner founder to perform services during a certain campaign or siege. This ad hoc arrangement remained until the ascension of Sultan Mehmed II. In order to achieve his grand design, his singular goal, the conquest of Constantinople, he enlisted all the available European and native master gunners, cannon founders, and other engineers and technicians, and organized them into a single corps, the Topçu Ocağı, or literally translated as the hearth of the cannoneers. With the Ottoman conquest of Constantinople, the newly founded artillery corps became legendary, not only within the Ottoman military, but also within the Old World as well. Their importance was soon proven again during the Otluk Beyli battle against the Akkoyunlu Sultanate. In this battle, the Ottoman artillery employed in concert with war wagons created havoc within the ranks of the nomadic Akkoyunlu army. While other factors such as discipline were important, the artillery overshadowed the rest. The continuous campaigns of Mehmed created a conducive atmosphere, opportunities, and the financial assets for the artillery corps to improve its organizational structure, increases in personnel, and acquiring new weapons. The post-Mehmed artillery corps essentially consisted of two main branches: cannon foundries and field artillery units. The Ottomans initially emphasized cannon production, and secondly, the gunners. The first cannon foundry was established in Edirne, the old capital, and later moved to Istanbul, where it was known as the Tophane-i Amire, the Imperial Cannon Foundry. The Tophane remained the biggest and most important foundry of the military until the end of the empire. Various foundries were opened and later closed in provincial centers according to the current needs of the time. Some of these local foundries even surpassed the Tophane in terms of importance and production, but only briefly and usually during the conduct of a particular campaign. It was also a common practice for the Ottoman expeditionary forces to carry the necessary materials to cast the cannons at the sieges. According to both contemporary observers of the Ottoman Empire and modern scholars, Ottoman cannons clearly lag behind the West European designs by clinging to older huge bombards of poor quality metal composition. However, modern researchers are revising this commonly held conviction. According to recent findings, Ottoman military engineers managed to produce cannons with up-to-date designs in line with their European counterparts until the beginning of the 18th century. The impressive series of siege victories against the modern fortresses of Hungary during the second half of the 16th century also proved that the level of Ottoman artillery technology and its field application to be on par of that with Europe. Additionally, most of the technologically related problems that affected the Ottoman artillery systems were common problems also affecting its arch enemies, the Habsburg Empire and Venice. Last but not least, it is almost impossible to validate some of the commonly held notions concerning the Ottoman artillery, such as the alleged inferior metal composition, without conducting extensive research and scientific analysis on the cannons themselves. In reality, the empire had distinctive advantages in comparison to its rivals. Importantly, and in opposition to most of the European states, the empire had the necessary mineral ore, except for tin, and made use of them in the more than 25 gunpowder mills and 19 cannon foundries in the various corners of its provinces. The Ottomans established a very effective administrative financial bureaucracy. In fact, to face the Ottomans was to face their massive bureaucracy itself. In order to control cannon production and to meet the needs of engineers and technicians when needed during this period. In truth, its European enemies were unable to enforce restrictions on technology transfer from theirs to the Ottomans, which the Ottomans made use of, and were unable of conducting military campaigns in various theaters. The Ottoman Empire did not suffer difficulty in enlisting European military to stop the transmission of military knowledge. Likewise, the Ottoman restrictions against Iran did not work either, and the Ottoman trained master gunners and founders became sought-after specialists, not only in Iran, but also in Central Asia, Afghanistan, and even sent to Babur in India, where he used new techniques to carve out himself a glorious nation. Even though cannon casting and gunpowder production remained the critical foundation, the real strength of the Ottoman artillery lay with the soldiers of its field and fortress units. Understandably, cannons alone cannot conquer fortresses and defeat enemy armies, and only well-trained and properly organized and led artillery units can achieve success on the battlefield. Until the beginning of the 17th century, the Ottoman artillery remained the only standing and salaried corps of its kind, and its biggest institutional advantage was the privilege of selecting the best and brightest from the Ajami Ojar. The Shakids, or artillery novices, passed through an intensive and demanding on-the-job training program, normally 4 to 5 years, before finding empty slots within the corps. Even after becoming regular soldiers, they participated in mandatory training 2 days a week under immediate control of master gunners. In addition to extensive training, continuous campaigns and constant campaigns, an increasing number of sieges provided adequate opportunities for the Ottoman military engineers to practice the profession and enabled them to follow developments taking place in enemy camps. Thanks to its effective military administrative structure, the Ottomans had both the means to imitate and to improve new weapons and to change its arsenal in a relatively short time. Even though cannon casting and gunpowder production remained the critical foundation, the real strength of the Ottoman artillery certainly lay with its soldiers. The strength of the field artillery corps rose from a modest figure of 250 in 1453 to 1,204 in 1567 and 2,872 in 1598, excluding the personnel in border fortress and provincial artillery units. These soldiers were organized into Jemaats, just like the Janissaries, of approximately 100 personnel, which later rose to 250 personnel each. The number of Jemaats will also increase following the increase of personnel from a few to 72 in 1687, all of which were stationed in Istanbul. The first Jemaat was the personnel unit of the Topçu Pasha, commander of the artillery corps, and comprised more than 500 men, who were organized into 5 bölüks. Not surprisingly, The strength of the Ottoman artillery exceeded all of its enemies together and remained so into the beginning of the 17th century. In order to guard the newly conquered Hungarian provinces, the Hungarian defense system was revitalized by repairing old fortresses and building new ones after the peace treaty of 1568. Fortress artillery units became so critical that more locals were recruited as cannoneers, some salaried and others as timariot, and consequently 4 cannon foundries and 3 gunpowder mills were founded in Hungary. The continuous nature of warfare, even during peacetime, and rapid technological changes provided a lively environment for the Ottoman cannoneers to improve themselves and their techniques. The expeditionary units had the ability to, in an emergency, to produce, repair, and with a limited amount of gunpowder, provide support to field casting units. These mobile artillery units were commonly positioned in the center of the Tabur Chengi, which is featured in another video, in front of the Janissaries, but behind a thin screen of Azabs. They were rarely positioned on the flanks in battle, always in the center. The artillery was the most prestigious of the Capicula. Even the subsequent degeneration and corruption of the decades of neglect did not change the status. In fact, most of the later reforms targeted this corps first than any other corps. It outlived all the other Capicula corps and transformed into a new organization after 1826. That's it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, please view my other ones. There'll be more videos coming in the future. Thank you.